everyone. Bon dia. Needing to practice with all of you. In just about 10 minutes, Chris and I want to help set the tone here for the day. Aligning very much with Scale Up, we're going to introduce something called the Regeneration Project. It's our 2012 initiative between our two organizations and with a group of partners. 2012, huge anniversary, right? Series of anniversaries. Rio plus 20, obviously. Brundtland plus 25. Stockholm plus 40. And as we go through all these anniversaries, we felt that a retrospective look back at what's happened and at the degree of change that's been accomplished was more than appropriate. But also even more than that, to try and ask the question through the Regeneration Project about how the private sector can help us move forward at greater speed and scale. And as we sit here with, I think, legitimate worry about what kind of negotiated agreement we will or won't see at the end of this week, this question of what other non-governmental actors can do to maintain and build momentum on sustainable development seems all the more pressing. I would characterize Regeneration as a project made up of partners and layers. So our partners are scattered on the screen behind me right now. The partnership aspect seems so critical in that we think coalition building, the pulling together of people across sectors, will be, again, an essential instrument of progress. And some of the global public opinion polling we've done as part of the project says it's actually one of the things that citizens are most optimistic about, that this might be what gets the job done. I want to single out two partners on the screen in particular, WBCSD, who's obviously created the opportunity for us to be here, but also to say we feel really aligned with the WBCSD 2050 vision. And if you're familiar at all with that report, there's a section of it called the Turbulent Teens that looks at what has to happen here through 2020 when we think the really critical foundation will be laid that sets our course through mid-century. So Regeneration's focused on the short-term actions and decisions that the private sector needs to take or help take. And I also wanted to call out BMW, who is one of our two presenting sponsors along with SC Johnson, but was also that first company who took a close look, and their interest, you know, it always creates interest of others. Once people know that someone with that kind of influence and stature is going to take a chance on a project like this, it pulled the others in. We're running a 2-hour session on the Regeneration Project at the BMW Pavilion in the Athletic Park tomorrow afternoon, 4:30. If any of you are interested this morning, want to take a deeper dive, we'd love to have you join us. Finally, I'm going to introduce a video. The project, I said, is also made up of layers, and one of the critical layers was a retrospective look at the last 20 years through the eyes of a group of 20 sustainable development pioneers, people who were instrumental in setting the agenda in 1992 and pushing it forward since then. Folks like Gro Harlem Brundtland, Rajendra Pachauri, Mark Moody Stewart, former WBCSD chair, of course. They were incredibly gracious, giving us their wisdom and insight on what the agenda looked like 20 years ago, what's happened since, and what needs to go forward. And this 3-minute piece is called 21st Century Leadership. If we can run the video, please.
In 1980, the collective annual value of corporations around the world was 25% of the collective annual GDPs of all the countries in the world. By 2010, it had become the equal. That is, corporate values are equal to the wealth of countries. So they have become a major force.
If you go back 20 years ago, there were very few businesses that even knew what sustainability was, and if they did, they were pretty much against it. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find a business that doesn't understand the importance of it.
What business has actually done in the intervening 20 years is astonishing, because this is a market that is fundamentally designed to thwart sustainability. It's designed to continue to externalize cost, to punish good performance. It's designed to reward those who cut corners with natural capital and with the future of the planet and its life support systems.
So there still is a lot of necessity to move a broader part of businesses in many countries forward to the kind of realization and the leadership role that the best businesses are today showing.
Accenture last year, so 2010, did a study of 766 CEOs around the world. 93% think sustainability is really important. 88% know they have to drive it through their supply chains. 81%, and this for me was the worry, think that they've already embedded sustainability, when I think quite often what they've done is to appoint a chief sustainability officer. They've got a cycle of annual reports. They do stakeholder engagement, but they're not thinking about sustainability as a transformative agenda.
I think businesses are ready to act, and individual businesses have demonstrated that sustainability can be actually an important business goal, a business strategy.
We need to see the business community also view itself as part of the societal dialogue, not to stand by the side, not to ask society to underwrite all its commercial risks with either subsidies or risk guarantees, but to be able to work as a community of business and entrepreneurs in trying to move societies onto a new technology path.
Business can push the regulatory framework to improve. So it is important that business realize their role also to help the political system move forward.
An entity working in the field of business can't possibly succeed in a society that fails.
So great. So that's quite a remarkable collection of videos, and please, you're welcome to review them on the website. There's lots of inspiration from all kinds, and these are a set of tools that we hope you can use internally and also externally to kind of facilitate and build momentum around the project. We will now flip to quickly the other two layers that Mark referenced, which revolves around some research. And I recall John Elkington many years ago called me a weatherman on speed, and because we have a couple minutes left, I will leverage all of that power within me to be very quick as we go through. And just to kind of share with you, we did a survey of 1,600 experts across the world, 117 countries, to try and or aggregate the collective wisdom on where we are today currently and where we could go going forward. And I'll just share a couple of findings, but in the reports, please review them because there's all kinds of fantastic information on specific material issues and directions. But one of the challenges, as Marco said, we're in a crisis, and we all know we're in a crisis, and all the stakeholders across governments, NGOs, business, and academics that we surveyed understand and recognize the crisis we're in, and the sense of obstacles to getting out of the crisis are here. And not surprisingly, given the conversation at Rio the last 4 or 5 days, lack of political will is the #1 obstacle according to experts in the room and around the world. And this is a fundamental challenge. Not a surprise, but a fundamental challenge. The vested interests are also key. The complexity of the issues are a challenge, but by far and away it's the lack of political will, which is the largest, most intractable obstacle we have. Interestingly, only 4% of experts across the world identify inadequate technologies. It's not a technological problem we're facing, it's a software, a political issue that we're trying to get through. If we look at the wisdom of experts on various roles of actors in society, there's an interesting couple findings. We asked 2 questions. How are different institutions performing to date since the last Earth Summit, and who should lead going forward? And there's just two things I want to point out. One, we see national governments as outliers, awful performance collectively, but still viewed as the ones that should lead. So we're in this government is dead, long live government paradigm, which is really difficult to kind of get out of. The second interesting piece is the actor, the societal actor or mechanism for us to try and go forward that's most optimistic, where performance is strong and legitimacy and also a sense of leadership going forward, revolves around multi-sectoral partnerships and collaboration. Another word that's been referenced for the last 4 or 5 days, and this is good evidence that collectively we think there's legitimacy in this type of approach going forward as a possible solution. Lastly, we also surveyed 25,000 individuals across 23 countries to try and get the perspective of society on where we are to date, and there's fantastic examples of sense of progress to date, actors that are playing a positive role going forward. And I wanted to leave you with the last slide where we asked the public, the average person on the street across the world, what's your sense of the next 20 years? Will we make progress in some important pillars of sustainable development? And you can see between 54 and 58% of the public across the world, 25,000 voices represented here, have a pretty strong sense of optimism. Is it misplaced, we don't know. But what's critical for us to be successful as business people, as civil society leaders and governmental leaders, we need this psychology that exists around the world where people think we can find a way to go forward, which is an important momentum building piece for all of us to make progress in the short term. Last words?
3 words sum up the project for us. The 3 strands running forward: partnerships, obviously, how to build them, how to expand them, how to accelerate them. Policy, how do we influence the policy agenda? You saw Madame Brundtland saying business has a critical role to play in shaping the regulation we need, figuring out how to embrace the right framework that is some sustainability positive and hopefully competitively neutral, striking that balance. Partnerships, policy, and performance, continuing to push the performance of your own businesses to lift those in your sector who might not be as far along to work with your value chains. Thank you so much.